chit chat before the meetings can sometimes be recorded if it's running. Okay, I'm going to say it's 3:30 and I'll open the meeting. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the draft minutes, which some people couldn't open, of July 5th. You can remember that back that far.
I have a question on the spelling of Elisa's name. Is it L-Y, I mean A-L-Y-S-A?
No, K-L-I-S-A.
That's a correction.
Where is that?
So the name Elisa is spelled with a Y. It should be an I.
Where's her name in the, on the
In
minute?
the RSA paragraph toward the end.
91A.
Oh.
Last sentence.
Oh, you would be put it at the end.
The chair.
So it's L-A-L.
I-S-A.
I will correct that. Any other questions?
Sorry, Ken.
It's just a few walls.
Yeah, I guess
For
there
empty spots.
pages minutes here. Here's the minutes. Yes. Yeah, that's the agenda. Are these the same minutes as those minutes? Okay. Eight, agenda and minutes.
Did I just put them up over this?
Lovely.
Oh, these are last one.
Yes, we're just into approving these. This, it's a 2-page minutes.
Yeah, I read them today.
Oh, okay. So when people
So
are
I've said
ready,
one spelling correction so far. Are there any other corrections?
do I have a motion to approve the minutes with that one spelling correction?
So move.
Second? Do you want a second? July?
Second.
I'll second it then.
Patty.
Oh, you did. Okay. So the minutes of July 5th are approved. Okay, financial update.
Read the secretary.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Terry, my overconfidence, assuming that you can do this. Do I have a volunteer to take the minutes? Yeah, let's take turns. It's only fair. Don't silence.
I can try again. I'll
Thank
do it
you,
again.
Patty.
Okay.
Okay, Doug, do you want to review what? you
Yeah,
have?
I again failed to make a written report, but I did review the transactions over the past 3 months. And I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I was confused, however, that the only outlay was $12,500 to Mike Burns. And it said balance on contract. So I don't know whether we paid him $25,000 or $12,500.
I would assume it
If
was.
we paid him $25,000, it doesn't reflect on the
The
books of the
financials,
bond.
I think, are 1 month behind.
Okay.
I think the financials you get, the numbers are a month behind, that they're in this month's payment, the next one. So
This was the final payment. Apparently, it said balance due. It was in July. When did you pay the balance due? July 15th?
I submitted his payment, his invoice to Mary Ann Crandall on, I think, I don't remember the date, I think it was the 12th of July.
Was it the second invoice or the first?
That was his second invoice. He received a have 50% deposit
Right.
before he began the
So
project.
that 50% deposit is not reflected on the books of the park.
I'll
Okay.
double check that. I think it was paid a couple months ago.
Yeah, it doesn't show up. I asked Elisa for anything that relates to the park and it's not included. Okay. But other than that, situation about the same. There was a $2,000 payment received from the sailing club. And I'm not clear whether that is, the contribution.
It is a contribution.
It is, because
It's a contribution, and, last year we were allowed to count it toward the 50,000. Okay, it's a contribution toward, maintenance, improvements, whatever.
yes, but it's part of that agreement that or that offer you made early on to give us $2,000 a year for, I think, 5 years.
I believe it is still, I think that this is either the fourth or the fifth year.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, okay, so it was for the maintenance of the park.
But that was a maintenance and improvements. The last one counted toward the last grant. Okay, because,
Okay.
and, we hope it counts toward the match. That's
I
all.
would think it
And if
would.
you need for us to send you a letter saying it's toward improvements, we'll do it, because it should count, I think.
Or perhaps you could say, to be put toward the.
Well, see, I didn't write the letter.
conservation.
Reg Jones wrote, sent you the check.
I'll double check. We did it. We accepted it at the select board meeting as a donation, which would make me think it was going
Right.
towards that, but I'll
Yeah.
double check.
It is a donation. There's no, oh, what is it? Quid pro quo? There's nothing like that. It's straightforward donation.
Well, we've been pretty lackadaisical about, we've made no attempt to segregate the money that the three organizations agreed to pay us for maintenance. We've thrown it in the pot.
We didn't see that as agreement. We
town-
saw that as now, what we
Yeah.
were announcing. And
The town has not hit us up for any money to cover maintenance to this point, so.
Well, in the beginning, Jim Taylor, we asked Jim for an estimate of what they were spending, and it was roughly $4,000 a year in mowing and plowing, as I
Right.
recall.
Yeah.
And that would continue, because if you remember, some of the objection to the park itself and forming the park was, oh, it's going to cost the town a lot of money.
Right.
correct, that's when we
Maintenance.
jumped in. But how that money that we contribute directly gets used is your business, not our business. Is Ava, not Ava,
Eva. Yeah, they're paying $2,000 a year
Okay.
too.
And you should know, as far as, well, beyond as far as, we intend to continue, I know that there was a 4 or 5 year commitment on the, actually, but we're not intending to. It's in our budget.
We plan on continuing to. We are gonna treat it, whatever was. talked
Okay,
about
so
back
anyway,
then, it's
Yeah,
now.
but to me, it should get counted as a donation.
that's my financial report. Uh,
Okay, well, I also have under financial updates, fundraising, and since you are our chief honcho fundraiser,
Well, I sent out a list of proposed recipients of a fundraising letter. And it's an Excel spreadsheet, and it went hopefully to everybody present. It's got about 100 names on it. And I asked you to review it for corrections. Because a lot of those addresses have not been utilized in some time, and undoubtedly some of them have changed, or people have died or moved away. Did anybody review the list? Because I didn't hear from anybody.
Is it attached? Was it
It was an
recently?
attachment to an email to all committee members,
How recently, Doug?
about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I guess.
Okay, well, I have to go back and look, but I never saw
And
it.
I really need your input on that because we're gonna be spending postage on letters that are gonna come back, and that's a waste. So, I mean, all it takes is just to run down the list of 100 names to see if you know them and know of any changes in the circumstances. and let me know, and I'll correct my mailing list. Because at some point soon, we'll print out letters to all of those people. And, I'd like to have the addresses correct. Then I guess the plan will be to produce the letters and,
A letter signing.
bring them in and have a letter signing session. The committee will have to buy stationery.
Well, we're supposed to vote on whether.
Yeah, so I'm proposing that we approve the purchase of a couple of hundred sheets of letter quality
Letter.
stationery. Town doesn't have it.
I second it.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of purchasing, better quality paper, the type that you would use for a resume, for instance, to send letters to somebody like Mrs. Byrne? Favor, yeah. Okay, I say it's unanimous.
Just don't look too accurate in our letter.
No, but we used it for Old Town Days and it's not expensive.
So I'm gonna make an attempt to prepare those letters, unless anybody has objections.
After you build the deer fence. Okay, is that it?
That's it. I have nothing on volunteer hours.
Okay, I am proposing that we form some subcommittees. I've come up with 4 topics: green or gardens, landscaping, if you want to develop a name for that. Park infrastructure, which would be parkings, trails, etc. Fundraising and finance, and the mission statement. By working in a small group, I think we can get more done. And also, it means that we can communicate legally, is my understanding, Ed, is that correct? We can communicate with one another, and like if there's 3 people in a subcommittee.
Yeah, if we have a subcommittee, it works really well if you say, hey, you guys go, work on plantings and gardens and figuring out what they're due or what you want to put out there. I still would come back to the committee for final approval before you purchase a bunch of plants and start building, but to actually make the plan and have a working group, it's good if we have less than a quorum, you can actually communicate back and forth and get something done. It'll be a lot faster than coming together once a month to try to brainstorm and get
Yeah.
things completed.
I would call it a working group.
Yeah.
Yes, Doug?
Is your proposal that all 3 members, if it's a 3-member committee, be members of this committee, or can we?
I
Outside.
Ed, I'm still unclear on that. For instance,
I
if,
would not officially appoint people
okay,
outside of the committee on it, but the subgroups can work with whoever they want.
sure,
If you start making the committee too big, then it becomes a committee of a committee, and
Right.
then you have to have minutes and notices, and it becomes a big public.
for instance, if Patty has somebody that is enthusiastic about watering, but she or he is not part of this committee, that's fine.
Well, and any volunteers can water and take
Sure.
care of the plants and those things. I think this subgroup to me would be more creating that plan that we're bringing back to the group of where are we gonna put gardens, what are they gonna look like, what are we gonna put in them? And then they can
Okay.
move forward.
Can the subcommittee communicate with volunteers?
Yeah.
Like, we're not many members, like in a group email?
Yeah, you're a subcommittee, you're a working group, you're not an open public meeting,
Got it.
as this group is a town committee.
Official town committee, and the sailing club is a good example because I know we've gotten a lot of help from Bill Fontaine, for instance. Bill isn't a member of this committee, but I've seen Bill haul trees out of the lake.
The only thing I would caution is anything that's gonna cost money or that you're gonna be doing to the park needs to come back here for a motion. and
Right,
approval.
exactly.
But
Anything that's
Planning it, or I'm gonna coordinate people just to water and take care of stuff, that doesn't have to come back to the group.
okay, so, do I have any comments on these, suggested topics for subcommittees. Anything you'd like to see added, changed?
I have a question, the pavilion and the use of the pavilion, would that fall under a subcommittee?
I would think that would come in under park infrastructure
Infrastructure.
since it's a
And what do you-
building.
What are you looking for there?
In what?
Use of the pavilion, what are you?
Well, I guess my vision was that the pavilion would be used for various events and it is such as it's being used. And I think as people realize that it's there, I mean, the Upper Valley Land Trust is certainly taking
Yeah.
advantage of it. There's a group that meets informally there, I think, to knit. The Old Home Days is going to have the dance there, which means they don't have to hire a tent, which is huge. Like any bandstand would be used, outdoor concerts even.
Yeah, I just don't know what you guys are gonna be doing for making policy on that. I mean, that's a town park. It's a
Right.
Town use, we can, but we can't regulate the use. If we say music's allowed, then music's allowed.
Well, within reason, I think,
No,
we
we're
have
not.
to,
As a public entity, we can't do that.
well, yes, but we have to give a nod to the
That's my,
sound.
that's my concern. There's a lot of legal stuff here. So this group's creating policies of what can and can't be used there.
What we've been doing is making suggestions. We haven't made any policy. I did a lot of research on what other parks do for collecting funds. If somebody, for instance, wants to rent the pavilion or whatever, they, there's, usually it's based on numbers. 1 to 25 people is X amount of dollars, and then it goes up.
Yeah, we're already working on that townwide.
Mhm.
That's where I just don't know if this group's the group to.
No, I don't
regulate
think
that
it would. Okay,
Well, I'm just thinking, and I'm happy if the town does it,
Yeah.
as opposed to the committee, but I know a number of people in the neighborhood have spoken to me about they don't want music at 10 p.m.
exactly, but I
Closes at
think
dusk.
that's covered by the town ordinance.
Well, I'm
on
just saying,
sound.
we need to conform to
Yeah,
that.
and we'll take recommendations. I just don't want to work through doing all this work, coming up with these things that we go, yeah, no, this doesn't work.
David Buffet has his hand up. He's here on Zoom. Not Zoom, Teams, sorry. David?
So,
Can you-
hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you, okay. I was talking today with our new recreation director about the possibility of using the pavilion for a small traditional music session next year that would have used the pavilion and as well as other canopies around the property for that. I'm not sure that it's going to happen next year, but that would be the possibility. I think it's clear that the town ordinances regarding noise, dawn to dusk use, and no alcohol will need to be included, perhaps parks wide, not just the Mascoma Lakeside Park, but that sounds like that's being done through the ordinances and the town. If the town wants to have input from a representative of this committee, it certainly makes sense to do that. Thank
okay.
you.
Penny?
I think the piece of pavilion use that I would be interested in seeing this group talk about, and maybe it happened before I came. So I think we need to talk about, it's really a fairly small park, but it's bigger than a pocket park. But I don't have a sense of what people envision as the number of people they think the park can manage and hold comfortably at any one point in time. So that to me seems important for whether it's the town or whether it's this committee in various planning aspects. I mean, parking is certainly one, but I also think in terms of the tent when the tent gets, rented by some group that wants to have a wedding or a musical event or something, you know, if we have a sense of the, what the park can hold comfortably, I think that will help us make other decisions.
Yeah, there should be a policy.
We should have some concept of what we think is a comfortable number for the park to be. And not that we can control it, but it might influence us in terms of how we look at the pavilion, look at the tent space, look at the parking.
The hard thing with that is it's gonna be event specific.
Mhm.
You can't just say,
Exactly.
here's an occupancy of a park. It
Yeah.
depends what you're doing.
And
But
people
we
could
can
come
say,
in on
we can
foot.
say that your event is too big for this park if we have some sense of what the park can manage, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Or am I?
I think
Okay,
it is
well, sure,
becoming
excuse me, Shirley has a comment, Shirley. Please unmute.
Thank you. I think it would be very wise that the town makes a policy for the use of the park, as they do for other places that are rented or used in town. And then the policy would align with all the other uses in town.
That makes sense.
So do you set limits on the building, what is it called, community building?
Yes,
The community building has an occupancy code by fire code. Outdoor spaces, they
Yeah,
don't
would
really
you-
have that.
Would the town be interested in having 200 people at a wedding at the park?
If, I don't know that you'd fit that many, but if you
Yeah.
could and you could find parking off-site,
yeah, that's why I had talked to Father Sullivan about the possibility of if, again, this is a if situation. If someone were to rent the pavilion or put up a tent for a wedding, because there have already been weddings there.
Yeah, but-
Excuse me, Kate, I'm speaking,
Okay.
okay? Just wait a minute. Then there could be an arrangement where the people having the wedding would have a shuttle bus that would bring people to the park, and that would take all the wedding guests away from the parking area. We also have the beach parking area too, so people can park there and walk over the bridge. I think the park is still a work in progress. Yes.
A wedding without drinking is unusual in public.
Well, I want to comment on the alcohol business. We have had Old Home Day events where Lori Bliss ran a beer tent in the, a beer garden in Hughes Park. And she had to go to Concord, even though she serves alcohol all the time, she had to take a special course. And, when it was first proposed, I thought, oh, the chief of police, it wasn't Roy Holland at the time, was gonna have a fit about this. But he didn't, and it was successful, and we didn't have a single problem with the alcohol. So you can get a one-day license to serve alcohol in a public space.
And is that, and that conforms to the town ordinance? Because that is one of the things that neighbors.
Well, we've done
worry
it
about.
before, so I assume it must conform to the town ordinance. If not, we were illegal,
Well, we weren't at the park.
but we did it at Hughes Park. David?
You're muted.
That was my question too, and maybe Ed can answer that. Isn't there a town ordinance regarding no alcohol on in public parks? And is there any exceptions to that
The law then.
ordinance?
there is no alcohol in public parks at this time. There is ability for the select board to give an exception to this.
So that must have been the situation when we had these two beer gardens at two different Old Home Days.
Excuse me, getting back to the committees, is it your intention to form these committees tonight or?
Well, I
Yeah.
put it out for people to think about and yes, vote on if we're ready for that. Do you think it's a good idea?
Send around a sheet and people can sign up with that. We help.
Well, first we have to establish that we're going to establish, we need to vote on whether the subcommittees will be formed.
I
And
would
if
have
so-
a little bit more discussion on which ones, and you could just
Sure.
do a motion to establish those
Yeah, we
ones if you.
kind of got hung up on the pavilion business.
Well, I think the question was, is the pavilion important enough to be a committee of its own, or is it included in the park infrastructure?
I think it can go with the park infrastructure.
Okay.
What I'm thinking of is cleaning the pavilion, for instance. It's full of little bugs and spiders that needs to be cleaned, and there are black marks on the floor from some hot dogger. And how are we gonna get those off?
But the committee will not schedule events, the town will
Right.
do that.
Right. Because I see the committee trying to schedule events as a nightmare. It's not gonna happen.
No, and, I mean, we can talk about that a little bit more when we get there, but we're working on that now. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I think the way you guys have it worded, park infrastructure is a great way to do it,
Yeah.
because they can work on designing the trails and those things right now, and they can also work on
Cleaning the bugs.
pavilion. Coordinating with me or Jim to see about power washing the concrete.
I almost hate to mention this. Where would you put the shorefront on this list?
Shorefront,
Meaning, there's 3,000 feet of,
right?
is that under green or is that?
I think I'm under green. Green,
What do you-
because that includes the removal of the invasives
Yeah.
that we have to work on.
And erosion and planting that will help us deal with all that.
Perfect, right. Right.
All right, I guess I'd like a motion to accept the concept of subcommittees and be able to form these subcommittees.
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Well, discussion.
Aye.
Oh, discussion, sorry. Thought we've done that.
Well, I know, but you're supposed to legally have discussed it,
Okay.
and I have one comment. Mission statement seems, couldn't it join one of the others? Or do you want? to have-
Well, I had talked to Terry about that, and we haven't had a lot of enthusiasm for
Getting it done.
mission statement stuff. So anybody that wants to work on a mission statement with wherever two or more are gathered, shall I say?
Yeah, I wouldn't have more than 3,
Oh, God.
not on the. Everything.
Okay.
That was my.
So is there any more discussion before we move forward? David? Yes?
Just a point of order, don't we have to do a roll call so I can vote?
Yes, but we haven't gotten to that quite yet.
Okay, I thought you were about to do so.
All right, if there's no more discussion, can we move to a roll call vote? Okay,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Penny,
Yes,
and I'm a yes, and David
Yes,
and Shirley.
She's muted.
Yes,
Okay, so we have a very loosely proposed subcommittees voted on. And we can now move to form these various committees. Not sure how. Do you want to accept the 4 that I put down, or are there other
I think
suggestions?
that's what we did, yeah.
Okay. All right, and if anyone wants to move forward with any of these committees, please let me know.
Is that what you want us to do? Email you?
Yeah, that's a good thing to do.
Okay.
I would recommend you do what Terry said and have her pass around a.
Okay, that's a
bit
good,
for now,
yeah.
and you guys.
Sign up
have a
sheet?
form
Yeah.
for this
I'll take care of it.
over today.
Signing in blood is always good.
Well, and then you may have 4 or 5 in one area. that you
Yeah.
guys can discuss
Would you be
that
willing to
in the
move to
meeting.
X, Y, Z, yeah? Okay,
We also have to get there. But that's.
We can do that. if they-
Yeah. they can email necessary.
or chat. Is there a chat on that one?
I'm with Paul Mirsky. I find these two-way things really off-putting. Asphalt removal. Have you had any word from our friend Lou Belker?
Not yet. I'm working with Rob. We're gonna be getting DOT approval. We've talked with the Friends of the Northern Rail Trail. I talked with all our emergency services to make sure none of them thought it was still needed. If
How
we're in
could
a
it be
place
needed? They drive right into the pavilion.
everybody thought it was good to remove it.
Yeah,
I don't think we're gonna have a problem with the state, but we do have to get state DOT permission before we remove it. But
because it would be nice to get some things planted in there this fall.
Well,
that-
if you're gonna plant something besides grass, you're gonna have to get that approval from DOT.
Well, we'll go with grass. That's good.
Can we do it, could we do it at the same time?
You mean at the same time?
At the same time that we get permission to remove the asphalt, can we ask for, small, less than 2 feet tall shrubs?
You can if you want to.
We have to be careful there, Penny. We
It's
had
not our
shrubs planted in there. The DOT planted them when they turned the land over to us, and they were all killed by bicyclists and snowmobiles. They just rode right over them.
Yeah, and it's not city property.
Okay.
And I'd recommend grass.
Retaining wall. There were some, Terry, do you want to address that?
We go on, how about forbidden use and concerns?
Oh, yes, sorry, I skipped right over it. Pavilion use. Well, as policies and procedures for the pavilion use, that's in the town's,
Guess if we're doing.
We discussed the idea of a chain across the entrance from the tent side. I thought it was a good idea, just one of these plastic covered, white plastic covered chains that anybody could remove. I'm not suggesting locking it or anything, but if you're on a bicycle headed into the pavilion, you have to dismount and move the chain in order to ride your bike out onto the floor of the pavilion. And that might deter you from doing wheelies and, you know, just a chain that anybody could remove. I would think that might be a suitable and adequate deterrent. Keep these kids from roaring right in and doing a wheelie. Must have been how those marks got on the floor.
The wheelies won't do that because you still got the tire in motion. You have no friction.
Yeah, the marks
So-
inside are obviously a BMX bike and someone was in there doing tricks and playing around. I don't think a chain would stop that at all.
well, it stopped people from going
It
in.
would stop the people that are riding through to go onto the rail trail,
Yeah,
which is good and bad.
Well, the wire or rope or whatever they put on the hillside where we had a real problem last year has certainly
Yeah.
stopped bicyclists and walkers from coming down that hill because it's all grassy now. Last
Yeah,
year,
it
we
goes-
had some bald spots.
It'll slow people down, and if it's up.
Or just guide them to take the trail like most people do.
I move we put a chain across that particular entrance. Does everybody know what entrance I'm talking about? It's the central longitudinal
On the
entrance
village end,
from the tent platform and into the pavilion.
Terry?
I really don't like the idea of putting a chain there. I think it will make the pavilion look tacky. I think, it also blocks pedestrian traffic. I personally don't see the need for one, and I think it would look ugly.
Well, I didn't get a second.
Can you mute David?
How are you gonna
Those are my
prevent,
feelings on it.
how are you gonna prevent them from doing what they're doing?
I don't think we need to prevent them from doing what they're doing.
You think it's
That's my
perfectly all right to ride bicycles through the pavilion?
Well, this wasn't
It's
just
not
riding a
doing
bike,
any
this was
harm.
intentionally breaking.
Well, it
it.
really bothers me
I
that
know
somebody
it
is
does bother
rude
you.
enough to ride a bicycle through a beautiful building? Would they be doing it if it were bandstand? You know, like they have in Norwich.
If there were steps to going up, no, they probably would not be doing it, but you have a rail trail coming right down to there. And I see most bicyclists do go around and some go through, the ones that go through, they're in rubber tires. I don't see the problem, Meredith, and I know you feel that it's a problem and we just will agree to disagree.
I guess it's a reflection of really bad manners to me.
Well, then how do we clean it off? I don't even know how it's done.
Paints them.
Yeah, I do want to differentiate those. The people riding through are not making it.
No, I know
That
that.
was the
Somebody
key
went there and
point.
and intentionally slammed on the brakes and skidded and made those marks. That's what I'm
They're
trying
gonna
to.
do that
Huh?
anyway. It's a
Right.
public park. We can just clean it off.
And so one, I think the change is ugly. If we wanted to block one particular place, I would hope to do it with a bench or with a planting box. Two, I agree that it's not the person riding through. I thought it would be skateboarders, but it turns out it's bike, that would be used.
I never envisioned this park as a bicycle park.
Well,
in the
and,
first
and
place.
even though the bandstand in Norwich is not used that way,
Mhm.
at the recreation area, the pavilion with the cement floor
Mhm.
is used that way, okay, because it's surrounded by grass. There's a soccer field and then
So I just have to suck it up and let people,
well, I think for a while, let's just, they take our time and
maybe
see.
some tax on the
You know,
floor.
I think that the other thing is that you put asphalt all the way around it, and I think it kind of, I don't know, it does lend itself to people speeding around. I would have left that as plantings, and I think it would have slowed people down, or a dirt path or flagstones or anything like that would have slowed people down. By having asphalt around it, I think it really, it's
ADA,
like, whoop. So,
I
Okay,
haven't sat out there enough to really say it isn't, that it is disrespectful, but I don't know.
it just boggles the mind to see people riding bicycles through there. I
Well,
just
if the
don't get
town
it.
cleans it up, then I'll be satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, we can work on it every year or so. We'll spray it off. That's fine.
Come up with something that would, eliminate the black marks another year. Is there a coating?
How about painting the floor black?
No, this weekend I stayed someplace, and it shocked me. They looked like wood floors, but they obviously had something on top. Because chairs didn't scrape or whatever, like maybe there is something we can do that makes it
I
less.
think muriatic acid is what you clean masonry with.
Okay, well, I know, but maybe you.
Pressure washer is the best way to
It'll
clean
probably
that
get better.
concrete.
But the rust stains, we
Yeah.
use water on it, it's.
Yeah, if you have stains, you have to.
Yeah.
What's the
That
word
rubber
you
should
used?
come out.
What did you say you used?
A pressure washer, it's just water.
Okay,
That will get rid of the bugs and cobwebs too.
okay.
Retaining wall. There are some concerns about the height of the retaining wall, and it should have been higher. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, I got a call from Steve Patton. Everybody knows, and he was pretty upset that he felt we missed an opportunity to improve the retaining wall, that it should have been higher than it currently is. You'll see in some places it's almost level with the ground. So he felt that it should have been at least 3 inches higher than it currently is. And that is probably not on Mike Burns.
No, we
This is a
would have,
design flaw, maybe on the committee, that we didn't envision that we would need extra height. We said we were just replacing the old wall, and that's exactly what he did. So it's hindsight, we should have probably looked at that better.
I don't
There
know
are
how
things
it
we
would
can
have
do going forward to make sure that there's less runoff hitting the wall. And I think that's where we'll have to focus our attention.
come into the grading situation when we
Yeah,
do the
be really
parking.
super careful that everything we can change moves water away from the lake.
Yeah, which we would do anyhow.
And the other thing with that retaining wall where it sits, this is probably a little off the subject, sorry, but I think people are gonna sit on the retaining wall. It's at a beautiful height for that. And I would eliminate any plantings below the wall and put in some gravel. Because whatever we do there, it's gonna be stepped on. If people are gonna sit on it, we can do a whole row of plantings, but keep them maybe 3 feet away from the wall. That would be
Gravel
my
would
suggestion.
absorb the runoff that's spilled over the top of the wall too.
If it's gravel.
Yeah.
Yeah, plants will help too, but I think
Yeah.
plants have to be maintained and they're gonna get trampled if people are constantly gonna. I would say that's a beautiful sitting place.
Yeah, and it's being used a lot, that particular area. There were a whole group of people down there.
And I know,
The other
I know
day.
that you made an attempt to put in a couple gardens. I don't think that. In the thinking of a plan for that, I wouldn't do that, but. I think gravel would make the most sense.
Back to the height of the wall, Terry, would that have affected our permit by notification?
Yes, we would
So
have had
that
to
would
apply
be
for a different permit.
Exactly, and it would have been expensive and time consuming.
I personally think that wall is still it's a huge improvement.
It is a huge improvement.
So, Steve said we lost an opportunity to make it even more. of an
Well, Steve
improvement.
wanted us to put in a ready rock wall, which would have been at least $10,000 more. I have two people that want to speak. I think David was first. David?
You've already dealt with that about the different permitting necessary if it was going to change that from what the previous wall was. So I defer.
Shirley, did you have
Uh,
a comment?
That was the point that I also was going to make too, that it would be in a whole different permitting process. But I am glad that we didn't go through that and replace the wall as it is. That's the way it should be done.
I want to understand what gravel means. Are we talking
Little
about
stones.
the hard pack that we have on the trails?
No, because hardpack is considered an impervious surface.
Okay, and stones, gravel is stones. Does that require a permit to put stones? Because the water comes up there.
I think you're gonna
Doesn't
have
come
real
up to the
trouble.
wall.
I think you're gonna have real trouble with gravel, but I would be interested in somebody from DES discussing what they thought was good, because usually, because my inclination towards plants, it has to do more with the environment. Two things. One, are we going to be, trying to make ourselves wildlife friendly, or are we just concerned about people? I mean, I understand. Yeah, I know. So we've got to kind of figure out how to do that then.
Well, we have a retired DES person that worked with the lakes for years. Ken, what do you say? What would you suggest for below the wall there?
I really don't know. I'd have to go take a look at it, but. What I've noticed though is people are making it a beach.
Yes.
There's lounge chairs down there. They're going swimming. There's umbrellas going up.
Mhm.
That's gonna be a problem.
Gravel's not gonna coordinate with that.
But as far as
I'm not
pollution,
talking about gravel, the whole beach. I'm talking about a strip right in front of the wall where people are gonna.
A
put their
drainage
feet.
strip.
Okay, so again, I wanted clarity.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what stays put in an area like that, because with the ice and the, the seasonal stuff, the ice will push anything around, and so plants help stabilize an area, and if you don't, you might, I understand if it was a more civilized spot, you might be able to keep a 3-foot strip of gravel, but I don't know, but if you're,
If it pushes,
have some
if
experience.
anything's pushing up, it's gonna hit the wall. Your gravel's gonna stay there.
I
The
don't
plant-
know, I don't know
So
how the
they-
level is with where the ice comes in the winter. I just haven't, if we see it through one season, we'll have a better idea of some of that.
was there anything mentioned in the DES permit as far as that goes?
It was a permit by notification. Of course, we were taking out an old rotted wall with spikes sticking up in
Yeah,
it.
it was,
I know one got
replacing,
impaled.
replacing any vegetation that was removed.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 2 comments. One is next door, Joe Gasparik's waterfront. He often has these little hills in the spring where and there's a word for them. They're common in Alaska, and it's where the ice got underneath and, so, so we can expect that, number one. And number two, I haven't talked to Shirley about what they did below their wall.
Okay, Shirley,
She's in the water.
Shirley's right here.
You know. And as she's getting ready, I would say, we might even consider, in the gravel, could we put plants? Bushes.
Well, that's what Terry's just brought up, is people are gonna
If
sit
you're
on
gonna
the
sit on the
wall.
wall, you gotta get on and off the wall.
Well, we could have, if we put a few bushes, they won't sit on the wall.
Well, there's,
Okay.
it's a natural place to sit. I don't have a problem
I
with
think
that.
that's the thing, they will, and they'll destroy your plants.
Yeah,
and
okay.
People will
No
be
problem.
upset.
We also have to remember that every plant that is put in there is going to have to be cared for.
Okay.
So
It needs to be
I
part of a plan.
advocate low maintenance.
That's what Shirley did.
Yeah.
Shirley?
I think that you'll find that there's already a base of gravel and crushed stone right under, if you go to try to dig to put something in there, that's what you'll find, because there's a foundation under that wall of crushed stone and gravel. And I think Terry's idea to keep it that way is a good one.
David?
Rather than discuss this any further with the full committee, can a small subcommittee take this on as part of the infrastructure group?
That's a great suggestion. Okay. I'll leave it with you. And can I add your name to the infrastructure group, David?
All right, but this is under the green.
Well, it's
Is
infrastructure.
it coming around?
It could be either way.
Green.
All right.
I haven't seen that list to know what's included in infrastructure. For this specific subject, I'd be happy to.
All right.
And I'm, okay, if Dave's doing that, I'll stick with you.
Yes.
Sure, Martha.
Okay, bike racks. I'd like a report from someone on, are they being used and will we need to put in a second bike rack? The bike rack,
Oh, we talked about possibly getting a bike rack for the beginning of the paths, when the paths go in, so that it would be a natural park your bike before you
Yeah.
go on the path. I don't think we need to order anything at this
okay,
point.
it's a holding pattern, in other words.
I think so.
Okay.
Unless somebody else has got a comment about it, I just,
I was gonna say the same thing. I'd wait till we're ready to build those and that'll give us more time. They just went up a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
So.
so
it just give us
They have to
time.
digest what they've got first. Okay, let's move on to planning for walking trails and plantings, and I'm gonna.
Hello, can I add something?
Yes,
Okay, I have seen only one bike on that rack, mine. Before we go purchasing another expensive
we
rack, I
weren't
would say,
suggesting that, David, excuse me, we weren't
I know,
suggesting that.
I know, let me finish, please. That I would suggest that if we're going to even consider that we move it around a little bit and see where there might be more use.
Patty, do you want to give us an update on planting plans and garden upkeep,
Yeah.
pressing needs?
sure. Let's see, I think, right now, just with the weather, the way things are, that probably it's better to not do a lot of planting. The watering is going well.
Yep, maybe everyone doesn't know that we have.
Yeah, so, DPW put in a great, water pump, and they're pumping water up from the lake in, they built a small cabinet, almost like a little house with a metal roof, to hold the pump and the hoses, the electrical extension cord. The pump was, placed in an area where they could get access to the electrical in the pavilion. So there's basically plug the pump in and, there's 300 feet of hose. Right now, we do need some kind of a cart or a hose reel
something substantial. Everything that I've seen is pretty flimsy. It just doesn't look like it would last. But, because the pump is at one end of the garden area and we have to go all the way down along, so it's 300 feet down. So that's where having the reel would be helpful for the second half.
Additionally, have to drag half that
Yeah.
hose, yeah.
The hard part is winding up that much hose and getting it back into the cabinet, but it works. And I think it's the watering of those gardens takes about 2 hours. Like by the time you get there, get the hoses out, set up, spread out, it's about a 2-hour job. So I think that it was important for me to understand that before I went ahead and tried to recruit volunteers for the job, to know exactly what it entails.
With one of those soaking hoses.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it would be wonderful if we could leave hoses out and there, but really that I mean, that would be hard. I think that hoses are expensive, but the kind of, like an irrigation type thing would
Yeah,
be
like you
great.
just set it up and leave it for 2 hours and then.
But you still have to connect the
Oh, yeah, you
hose
still
to
have to
the
do that.
hose.
And I think, that is something that probably could happen, where you could turn it on and let it run, as opposed to hand watering each bed.
Yeah.
That probably would be, but I think, we don't know exactly what's gonna happen with all those beds. So it's hard to think about investing in any kind of an irrigation system for up there, but for now, I think that this is really, it works well, there's plenty of pressure. A lot of people who have seen it they love that the town is using this natural resource, the lake water, so that's great, so, yeah. So if we can figure out how to get a good reel and where to put it, if it needs to be locked next to the little cabinet or house, whatever you want to call it.
Lock it to the bike rack.
Yeah, something, but that would be good if we could just keep something there.
So what you need is a really heavy duty industrial strength hose reel.
Yeah, like, exactly, yeah.
Maybe the fire department knows something.
They might,
The
maybe,
golf course goes up top.
but then where do we keep that? Like, where can we
Yeah.
tuck that, or, and probably, I guess it probably would have to be locked. But otherwise, it's great to have the water there, and I was able to also water the new grass, so that was nice as well. But even a sprinkler.
Yeah, we can use a sprinkler
Yeah,
on ours
yeah.
to get it set up and then
Yeah.
just let it run.
I don't, I think about that this is a public park and that in the meantime, people are coming and going and wanting to use things. So just trying to get there early in the morning so the hoses aren't everywhere and in everybody's way. So,
Okay, I happened to read an article this weekend, and they were talking about how it's environmentally better if you, put hose in the ground, it shoots water up,
yeah.
which would mean you wouldn't have to.
Well, the
Hold
soaker
back up.
hose does that. The
Right.
soaker hose is made out of old, tires and it sort of oozes water. We have
Right, but I
a
mean,
lot
that
of
it's there
soaker hoses.
permanently.
Right.
Yes, you just leave them. We have them in our blueberries.
Right, and that's
That
not,
is great. Those tend to be, they can be problematic, the hoses, depending on how many hoses, but they get, cracks and the leaks and in the winter and it's just. I mean, I think if we want to look more into, irrigation, even still using a pump from the lake, we could do that, but yeah, all of those little hoses. And again, we don't know what's gonna happen with all those garden beds, right? I mean, I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, I
They'll
think
always
it's
be there,
premature.
yeah, at this point.
The DOT put in those original garden beds. When they were turning the park over for us to purchase the land. Part of the deal in wrapping up their, whatever it was they had to rebuild Shaker Bridge, they put in those beds and did a lot of planting. They had some nursery and it was about this time of the year. It was a terrible time to be planting. And they came and planted a sort of an assortment of whatever.
Well, I think they look pretty good. And, I think people enjoy them at the park. They like seeing all the different plants in there and it kind of adds to the whole appeal, so. But for now, I guess once we know, what's gonna, because the parking, of course, right, may impact those beds, so. And then also too, we have to be careful that whatever we do plant, that we remember that the DPW guys have to mow. And
Always.
Yeah.
And plow in the winter. I had suggested, I guess maybe to you, Ed, that we could have someone from DPW, either Jim or Rick, somebody, tell us in an ideal world what he would like to see there for the mowing situation and maintenance.
Yeah, I talked with Rick and he said he'd be more than happy to do that.
Right.
I think the next step as we set up these committees is really to look at where you're gonna do plantings throughout the park and gardens, and then we'll look at where that trail goes.
Yeah.
And then we'll get Rick involved once we have a draft plan to. Because I don't think it really matters where the stuff is, it's more how it flows together so they can just mow real quickly through
Yeah.
there. It doesn't take them long now, so if we're taking up a little more space with garden beds, it's gonna cut their time down. But just making it where they don't have to back around and get into places.
Yeah, the trees, when we start planting trees, that may also be an issue. Just as an interjection, I sent Jim Taylor a thank you and to please express to all those involved, both for the pump and the pump house and the trail mowing. Those trails that they cut in are amazing, and they really had to cut through some rough stuff. It couldn't have been easy. And Jim said, thank you for your thanks, and he was gonna convey my sentiments. I wonder if we should write a formal letter to the people involved in the DPW.
Yeah, and I mean, if you guys remember when we walked the park, we asked that they would do that. What those are there for is if you would like the trail moved at all, it's time to do that now.
Yeah.
And we can cut it and see what it's gonna look like before we lay down thousands of dollars.
It looked pretty good to me. I walked them.
Yeah, well, we had talked about just where are we gonna put the gardens and if, you guys know gardens, sometimes it's nice to have that little swoop, and as Penny said, it may stop some of the bikes from riding the trails and stuff if they meander a little bit more
Yeah.
than just the loop.
It can have some meanders, but not be a problem for the people who have to maintain the path.
Yeah.
It's balanced.
Patty, do you have a workday plan for the fall?
I do not have a workday plan for the fall, but definitely will schedule one for the fall. And a couple actually, because we could probably do some invasive removal again
I think so.
on that.
And then this garden cleanup in
Yeah.
maybe October.
And I think, I guess we do have to decide to think about if we do want to plant anything in the new area. If we don't, at one point I thought we had talked about putting low shrubs in there to keep people back. But if we want to leave that open for seeding, that's different and that's fine. But then maybe we want to think about in the fall, if we want to put a couple of trees up in that area.
Which area?
Pardon?
Which area?
I'm up by where the new retaining wall is.
Oh, okay.
What about shrubs above the retaining?
Well, that's where I thought
So people could still sit on
Yeah.
it, the shrubs would be behind
Yeah.
it.
So if we were to do that, if we decide we want to put in some shrubs there, then the fall might be a good time for that. I did, just thinking a little bit about some trees for the park, and I did get some pricing on some 2-inch trees. 1 3/4 is the smallest that Northern Nurseries anyway does, but if we wanted to start thinking about putting in a couple of, I don't know, maybe maples or not at that end to bring in some shade, that might fall would be a good time for that.
Yeah, that would end.
Where the retaining wall is. So, if the committee feels that they don't want any big trees up there, then we can just think about shrubs, but there is space for a couple of trees.
I I had talked with Patty about the possibility of some trees, thinking in terms of the shapes of the tree, that because that's an area where there are a lot of benches, or will be a number of benches, and people sitting on the retaining wall, sounds like that, that we are looking, I think if we want trees there, we'll want trees that are fern shaped, that come like this. And so we'll want to look at the natural habit of the trees that we select. And that was one suggestion. And then the other one was that I would recommend, because we get a lot of wind along the lake, that we think in terms of groupings of 3, because the trees will then knit their roots with each other, and they'll be much happier, they'll be healthier, but they'll also be more stable. And so as you're envisioning things, if you can think in terms of 3, I think you will have happier trees.
Well, these are good suggestions that should be discussed with the Green Committee and then brought to the full committee for approval. But shade is really nice, especially in this weather. All right, anything else, Patty?
No, I think that that's fine. I mean, we'll, a budget for plantings and trails, the trail, I guess, Northern Nurseries has put together a list for us of shrubs. They're all basically the same price. And
Yeah.
so as we go forward, we can think about.
That's a place in White River?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
we
much
had
is a
wonderful
2-inch
luck with it.
maple?
So, a 2-inch maple. So I don't have a maple, I have elms and oaks. Like a 2-inch oak is 300.
Gee, we could dig some up.
I was just thinking the same thing. We've got so many in our woods. A 2-inch beech is $450. Trees are expensive. An American Princeton elm, 2-inch, $300.
Wait a minute,
Is that planted?
No, that's purchased.
Yeah.
you must be getting a mature tree,
Well, they're 2-inch,
2
2 and
inches
a half
around.
inch,
Got it.
which is
because
what,
I paid like $60, and that's one.
maybe the 1-inch.
Okay, but why can't?
Well, we could. Northern Nurseries doesn't supply that size.
I think if you go to Brown's
Brown's
Nursery, Brown's Nursery up in Thetford has the slightly smaller caliber. And I think that's easier if we're going to do the planting, to do the 1-inch. But again, it depends on what the group wants.
Well, again, we're getting into the weeds right now.
All right, but I want to say one other thing as we're, to do with it. You don't want oak. You do not want oak trees. The leaves are a problem. All right,
All deciduous trees.
I actually love oak trees.
I
think
may
they're
love
great.
the tree, but I have,
Yeah,
leaves
Green
like
Committee,
the
take
real
it off.
crap.
Yes, let's
Okay.
turn this to the
Sounds
Green
good.
Committee.
All
Fine.
right.
And then there's Grafton County Extension too, that we can check with.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, park management issues. David, he disappeared. Do you have something to tell us about the kiosk? Any news on the kiosk?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I had found when I was asked to or agreed to take on maintenance of the kiosk that there were a number of commercial postings on that. I took the liberty of removing those since they didn't, the ones that didn't say that they were authorized by somebody related to the park or the town. And so I just want to know for future whether that's the appropriate process or what guidance you or the town might have.
Yeah, I think that's certainly correct. Eliminate obvious commercial things. I don't know, were the things about, for instance, where to eat, Vicky's sometimes had.
No, it was having to do with at least one of them had to do with a person who was doing commercial diving and had
Oh, okay.
and I mean somewhat appropriate anyway, but it raises the issue of who does the approval and how can people access that. I would expect through the town somehow, but I'm not sure how.
Well, the bulletin board at the town hall is pretty full, I know that.
I was gonna say, we wouldn't regulate postings like that. If we're opening them to public posting there, then the public will be able to post there.
Taking down the outdated stuff is really important, and anything that really has nothing to do with the town of Enfield or the lake or.
Is that under park infrastructure?
Well, park management issues, I have it on the agenda, this is before.
I know, no, but I'm just saying, going forward, because one way to eliminate the problem is to have plastic on both sides, not just one side, you know? 'Cause then they won't be able to-
Well, we're not gonna do anything to the kiosk until it's moved to its final resting
All right,
place.
but I'm simply asking, is that a park infrastructure?
Yeah, I would think so. I think Cheryl needs to move. Access for the less able. I had an inquiry this week from you, I think originally, Ken, came from Anita about,
What's that noise up there?
yeah, it's,
Surely.
You got it. You got it.
No, it isn't me. I'm wondering what it is too.
It was Dave. We're good. He muted.
a woman in a wheelchair that's a birder that uses the rail trail to bird watch, probably over near the frog pond, I would think. And this was a friend of a friend that was got four people down the line. Anyhow, she wanted to know if the access to the park was wheelchair accessible. Doug said was, is that correct?
The access to the
The,
park,
from the rail trail, you know, the slope of it?
no, it's not.
Oh, it's not,
No.
okay.
I have a person that's watched them go back and forth up to the trail and back down the trail, and they were in wheelchairs.
Yeah,
They had no problem.
There's a big difference though, and, you know, Meredith had talked about the handicap use of the beach access.
Mhm.
There's a big difference between whether someone could navigate it or whether it's ADA accessible by
Yeah.
law.
True, okay.
And so it's not legally accessible. Can someone possibly get up in a wheelchair? Yeah, it's not
Okay.
real.
We're talking about the trail up to the,
The asphalt.
Yes,
not the ramp.
yeah, with a,
We're not talking about the ramp to the water.
no, the
No.
access point to the rail trail at the far end here. of the
Okay.
building.
All right.
The
So that
thing to
was not
remember is anything we touch to build at the park, we need to build to
Going
ADA
forward.
accessible.
And it was Steve's intent to be within whatever the regulations are. If he wasn't, I'd be surprised, but,
The ADA requirements are very specific and, you know, they're written in a legal manner and, Steve may not have understood them to their full, extent, but they don't meet that pathway, from the pavilion up to the rail trail is not an ADA, does not meet ADA requirements.
should we be considering, changing it?
I wouldn't right now. It's
If it's
anything we
working.
put in from now on,
Yeah,
we need to do unless someone comes back and says we have to fix that. 'Cause
Is there,
it'll be
as a matter of
expensive.
practical effect, they are able to negotiate.
Yeah, it'll be really expensive to tear it out and redo. it.
Oh, I was just thinking of maybe adding some on the slope to make the slope more.
and the
Right.
park, I mean, well, you can't get in from the rail trail, but you can access the park by the parking lot.
Yeah, I wanted to comment that I was there last Wednesday and, I think it's called Hanover Terrace. Brought a bus out and, unloaded about 8 or 10 very disabled people who then sat at the tables, and enjoyed the view for a half hour, 40 minutes. They left after, within an hour and a half. The one comment I want is in order to make that work, they parked that bus They went into the parking lot, they did not use what we consider the spaces, they parked it as close to the tables as they could, because they had to help people.
On the rock side,
Yeah, the waterfront
where
side.
we're trying to encourage people not to.
Well, that, I know that, I'm completely illegal, but I'm glad they did it, and I'm just mentioning it in terms of future planning,
Well,
that, and that a handicapped parking space.
well, that will go in when the parking is planned, Kate. I was there the other day and New England Healing Sports was there with their big truck-like van. They had a group of wheelchair disabled kayakers. It was amazing to watch them. They have this great big, it's got tires on either side. They help people get in and get out of their kayaks. In fact, I might want something like that to get out of the kayak.
Yeah,
It was, and they were coming back in the afternoon with another group. So there are disabled people that are using that park on a regular basis. And in fact, they told me that they were so glad to be back. They had stayed away during the construction when Mike Burns was there. So they're regulars.
Yeah, I just want us to think about them when we are planning the home. Good story.
Okay, let's see.
I've never seen anybody out there with a wheelchair, just to show a picture.
They were, Ken.
Very-
They weren't in wheelchairs in the kayak.
You know,
They brought them down the ramp and then they got them into the kayak. It was amazing to see them working.
you know, then I have a person that said they saw people going up and down in wheelchairs from that, on the bike path,
Yeah,
with these new machines they got now.
the electric wheelchairs, and this was an electric wheelchair group.
Yeah,
I have a photo that I took of a man in a wheelchair at the base. He was off to one side. He had obviously come down the ramp and gone over to one side and sat on the beach in his chair, so he must have negotiated the ramp.
When we bought the picnic tables, I know one of them was handicapped accessible. Was it just one or did we buy
We just
two?
one, you know, so we order more, I think that would be a great
Yeah.
thing to do, just make sure that they all are, because it just means one end is really open and you can bring a wheelchair right up to it.
I was looking over my records. Do you realize we bought those tables in 2016? They stood up really well.
Yeah, it's a great material.
Yeah.
It's a good.
so what would have to happen, making a oblique angle up that?
We'd have to study that to see what it would be, but doing enough construction, I know that it's gonna be a lot harder than you think. it's
Yeah,
gonna be, but-
we're not even gonna think about it right now.
Go in on the trails that you followed, and then make zigzag up.
We can
Clearly,
figure
it's
out-
an
20 years from
important
now.
feature of this park. Clearly,
I don't
accessibility.
know how wheelchair accessible the rail trail is. I mean, with the gravel that's on there, you'd have to have pretty sturdy wheelchair to be on.
Well, I guess
there.
this lady that's a birder,
And it's the same coming down the path, so. Yeah.
okay, town staff, reports, not covered in the agenda items.
I think we
Anything?
covered most of it. Whoever's working on infrastructure, Kevin does have a program that will draw the trails and put stuff in, so he can help document what people are working on. The only other thing, and I can let Kevin talk about it, but one thing we're rolling out, he's been working on a program to make it a little easier, but we do need people that are gonna use the park for any groups to contact Kevin and reserve the pavilion or spaces throughout town that you're gonna use. We haven't
Here,
had any, we haven't had any major problems yet, but we can see it coming.
Double booking?
When a group wants to use it, they show up and there's another group there. So we're gonna start a reservation system. He's working on a way where if a public person's reserving it and there's a fee that'll have to be paid before it's reserved, and if a town group is, we're working on a way that we can get around the payment and still get it reserved.
What about nonprofits like the Land Trust? I've had several
Non-
board meetings.
So nonprofits will have a promo code. You will go completely through the same thing our like summer camps, soccer camps do, you'll have to go through our rec desk program, which is on our website under recreation. You'll have to create an account, but every single nonprofit that approaches me, I can make a code, so when they go in to check out, it'll say that maybe they're being charged $300, but if once they put the promo code in, it wipes everything away. So that's already pretty much almost set up. I just want to do a little more testing on it. I have that on Lakeside, Hughes Park, the community building, and a few other places. That's all set up. So yeah, I mean, everything's already kind of set up, and just to kind of put it out there with the pavilion, if you are wanting to use it, I have about 3 or 4 emails a day with people asking to reserve it. So it's to the point where I'm currently writing up a whole thing with what prices around the town are charging for them, because I think it's a way where we can start.
I have a bunch of
Generating
information on
revenue.
fees that I can send you. Fees from various parks and what they charge and.
Well, I have every single park within a 200-mile radius that charges.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Rob sent me a few things. I've done some research with state parks and everything just to kind of see, because we can't charge, because what I started realizing, we can't charge the same amount for Hughes Park as we charge for Lakeside Park, because I'm starting to notice if you are renting a pavilion next to a lake or a waterway, you're looking at almost $100 more per rental. So it's just because, I mean, if you're having a celebration of life, how beautiful is it to be looking over a lake rather than a community building? So,
Right.
something I do want to bring up, I'll let you, I have multiple people asking about benches at the Lakeside Park for memorial benches. I have 3 right now
Okay,
that they're willing to pay what the price of the bench is gonna be, the placard on it. It's just,
Well,
that's-
they'd be more willing to do a picnic table with a plaque, because we could
Right.
use more picnic tables.
I mean, this is right where I say we need to get this
The plan.
plan done.
yeah,
So
I
we
think
know
right now we
how
have
many
enough benches.
And what we have. If we don't need any more benches, we can say, here's tables, we'll allow that
Yeah,
for
or
tables.
for a
Do we want a
memorial
tree?
trees.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
figure out what we want and where we want them, and then we can start letting.
and
people-
we're asking, but I guess we should establish it as a rule that all the benches be purchased from the same company.
Yeah.
Because,
and that we're totally with that, but
Yeah, I think right now we have enough.
so it doesn't look
To
like
give
a
you guys
furniture showroom.
kudos,
Yeah.
I mean, you guys bought benches, they're pretty, they look good. What we're doing in the town is we're gonna standardize benches across the entire town.
Yeah.
So onto Lakeside Park, so.
They are holding up beautifully.
Yeah.
They don't need
So
a
we're
lot of
making them
maintenance.
all look the
We
same.
haven't bought any benches. They've all been donations. The Lake Association donated 3 and then the nursery school
Yeah.
gave a bench.
So quick question, when you did your research, did you limit it to New Hampshire?
No, I did.
No, I know you did, but
No.
Vermont as well.
we're, in my opinion, we're too close to the border of Vermont not to include Vermont.
Okay, because yeah.
Because of where I come from, Omaha, Nebraska is right on the border, so everything that we did in Omaha, we had to consider Iowa, because, well, one of the suburbs of Omaha is Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Yeah.
So you have to, yeah, I didn't,
All right, and you're going to bring, when we get to the policy point, you know, in terms of who uses it and the graduates, that'll come to the committee for approval, or
Yep.
that'll go to the.
It's not
select
for
board?
approval, we'll let the committee know, but that's a select board decision.
Okay.
Please add tables as a possible memorial donation as well.
well, and I've told,
So when we get our plan done.
one of them's actually an employee of the town, and she's willing to do whatever picnic table bench. The lady that called me yesterday that is interested is willing to do whatever. I told them that we'd have to meet with the committee and finalize the park before obviously making that, because I don't want to sit here and have 4 or 5 more benches to go into the park when
In the place. to
picnic
put.
tables should be better.
Yeah.
Can you ask people as they're asking to have something for Memorial, whether trees would be, possible, because again, if we knew that somebody was willing to, pay for it, then bigger trees might make sense. But there's, like if we're paying for it ourselves,
I
we
would
might
just
want to.
put it in there. You can have a round number in your head right now that we know we're gonna need 5 trees at least.
I would
I
love
would just
it.
add them to the list.
I
and
would
we
love
can
it if we
start
put in
working
12
on it.
this year. I've already thought about it, and I know where they could go.
That needs to come
we need
back
a
to the
plan.
committee.
Well, no, but we said we weren't gonna talk about
I
it,
think
except
we
that
can easily say 6.
I think
That's
you
half
could
of
easily
what
say
you have.
6.
So I would put them on the list. If we can quickly come up with, or at least know we're gonna need 2 picnic benches, we can put that on the list and we can get those things ordered. If they're anything like the bike rack, we're. 8 to
So we had
10
talked
weeks
about
out.
one picnic table on the trail.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at least
Two.
one there.
2, because we had spots for 2, for the view, for the over, where they,
Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't know they were both picnic tables, so Penny. I
Yeah,
think
one
that
might be
we
bench.
really need to.
no,
have
1
a
was a
plan.
picnic table and 2 were benches.
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 Sorry, comment?
This, urgency for an overall plan, I'd like to explore how we push that process forward so that a plan, which I understand is a 2-dimensional drawing of the entire park as it will, as it's envisioned.
Yep.
Will be on this table and we can look at it and approve it. How do we push that process?
I say the green committee starts working on the plantings and gardens they'd like, and I think the infrastructure committee, they can either start with the trail or start with the parking lot right now, but start putting those pieces together, then we can come together in a meeting.
Could
Start
you put one of
overlapping
your
them.
DPW people on as a consultant on the infrastructure group so that, the parking, I mean.
Yeah, we absolutely can, or if the infrastructure group wants, Jim and a couple of people in the city to propose something back
Yeah.
to them to look at, we can work on that. All we
Yeah.
need is a little direction of what you want and we'll make it happen.
Good.
And same with the trails. I mean, like I said, if you want to start working it out, I can get Rick involved to say, yes, that's easily maintainable, and we can work with Kevin to get something drawn up to put in front of you so you can see it visually.
Great.
And do you remember when I first started talking about picnic tables, I think you said, well, they're just gonna throw them in the lake. So I found picnic tables that weigh 330 pounds. And we haven't had a single one go in the lake.
Or disappear. Don't,
Challenge accepted.
Don't temptate, or go into the back of a picnic truck.
We have the sign up sheet here if you need to know who's on your committee.
I want to be on whichever committee's going to deal with shorefront. It's unclear to me at this point, because whether that's.
I think that's green, because it's the invasives.
Okay,
Just make sure the committees have 4 or less people. If one starts to get more than
One
Yeah,
committee
then
only
it's
has
so-
one. I know,
that one.
You know which one that is. But I know John.
Well, that doesn't mean that you can't, even though you're not on the subcommittee, you can still pitch in and
Yeah.
pull weeds.
Yeah, we can't do
And
that.
the subcommittee can recruit additional members, can't we?
Yeah, but it says no more, 4 is
more,
the max.
yeah.
well, yes, no
So
more.
you pass it around, you can see who's on your committee.
Nobody.
Yeah, as soon as you hit 5, you get quorum and.
Yeah. And then let's have a secret handshake while we're at it.
Better.
Oh, so I'll take my name off. Look, there.
She joined your committee just so you wouldn't be alone.
Oh, man, you're sweetheart.
A glutton for
You
punishment.
never know, you never know.
It's
you
gonna
never
cost
know.
Well,
I mean, you said something to me.
he's got to see, he said he wanted to see the list. Well, I couldn't even sell Girl Scout cookies, so you don't want me on the fundraising committee.
Okay.
I have no problem going to foundations and grants, that sort of thing. Knocking on doors. Okay, I think we've covered everything. Does anyone have anything else?
Just a comment, I come out here quite a bit on my bike during the week. Place is empty. Might be 2 cars in the parking lot, 9, 10, 11 o'clock. So I think, the pandemic is over for now. Everybody's back to work. And it's what a difference. Last year, if you came out at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, the thing would be full. And so it's gonna be maybe less pressure on us.
Well, I didn't think the pandemic was over. I
Yeah,
heard today,
But people disappeared.
Just sitting here.
yeah, 430 people a day are still dying of COVID in this
And I'll
country.
call, the Trails Bureau to see if wheelchairs are even legal on the trail.
Well, that's a good point.
Because they've got a certain amount of things that are legal, but I
Well,
don't see why not.
then there's
They may have an
motorized
issue with
versus
motorized, but
unmotorized.
I know they're using 3-wheel
As I say, I
bicycles.
think it's illegal
Lift.
not to allow that.
Exactly.
Kevin,
Even the motorized.
I know they're using 3-wheel bicycles with disabled vets on the trail in Lebanon.
Do we know who's in charge of each of these committees so that they will then call the rest of the
I think
people?
the first step would be to have a meeting. I will send out an email to everybody for the various committees and what people have signed up for. And then when you have your first meeting, you will elect a chair or point person.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Yeah, point of order, I wouldn't call him a chair. I'd just elect someone.
Yeah.
to be-
Yeah, loosey
Would be
goosey.
the one that reports back to the.
I was thinking more in terms of, setting up the first meeting.
Yeah.
Who's gonna set up the first meeting?
I also, wasn't there something about a draft of a letter or something that we could sign?
That's
Not ready
right,
yet.
that got held up.
Not ready.
Not ready.
Perfect, okay,
Gotta get the stationery.
got it, okay.
Paper. Thank you, everybody. Progress slowly.